Today we're going to host our 111th speech of Mekan Konuşmaları, and guest is Sameeta Ahmed, and thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. Before starting, I will shortly introduce Sameeta Ahmed and her work to you. Sameeta Ahmed is an architect and artist based in Karachi, Pakistan, with higher education from the US. Since 2012, she has worked with the Swat Participatory Council, an NGO in the Swat Valley of northern Pakistan, to document and conserve vernacular tangible heritage. Some conservation work from this series has been nominated for the Aga Khan Award for architecture in the 2023 and 25 cycle. The conservation work has focused on the conservation of mosques and hujras. This vernacular architecture, approximately 200 to 300 years old, consists of wood frame structures with stone masonry and intricate wood carving exhibiting patterns from a rich heritage that fuses various regional traditions. Much of this work has been supported by the Prince Claus Fund and community contributions. In her talk, Ahmed will share the process of conservation and cultural documentation undertaken in her SWAT project, focusing in particular on principles of community participation and aspects of development-oriented social transformation involving youth in the aftermath of Taliban rule, the post-2009 war on terror in the Swat Valley. Again, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. Thanks so much for having me here. And I would be happy if you have any questions or comments in the middle of the talk, please interject. I'd love to have your feedback. So, as you know, today's talk is about my work in the Swat Valley of Pakistan. In the background, you can see some of the intricate traditional wood carving. That was part of one of the mosques that we had. So it's not just like surface relief, but also spindles and very intricate mix of things. So we'll talk about it further. And I myself am not originally from the Swat Valley. Pakistan is a country which has very diverse climatic zones, diverse ethnic groups and language groups. So often people ask me questions about how did you get into whatever you're doing. So this is just a little bit about my personal journey. And while my father was a modern architect, Pakistan, it's an interesting story. Pakistan didn't allow, the British in India, when they left, didn't allow natives to become architects. Only the British were allowed to be architects, and the old traditional Mimars were not allowed to have degrees. So my father's generation in the 50s was the first of the natives to become architects. And even then, there wasn't a full bachelor's and master's program. So he went to the US and then became one of the first to be trained in the international style and very classic modernism, which he brought back home. While my mother was, she was a literature person, and she was more into traditional arts. So she was teaching me, giving us all this traditional calligraphy, Quranic instruction, Urdu literature, and then she was part of a Sufi community. So that was, also gave us a different kind of, gave me a different, and then while in school, I had a sort of more Western art education. But at the same time, the Aga Khan Award for Architecture was coming out in the 80s when I was in high school, and Mimar magazine, if you have seen it. So while my father was a modernist, and since a kid, I used to hang out in his office and do that work. But I was also being trained in that language of postmodernist. The non-West should reassert its own tradition. There's no, ornament is not crime and such like that. So retraining tradition, and then conservation was part of that, like valuing traditional buildings. So that was a little bit of the medley that I give. And then whenever I think about my career or the work, I sort of, especially after having left Pakistan for for the US for my higher education, I became very aware that whatever I know or the sort of cultural values and priorities I have come from a regional context also. And Pakistan is sort of the region when the British left India, it was a Muslim separatist movement to have a separate Muslim state within India. So this portion that became Pakistan, and my parents were from where New Delhi is today. They were from around there. They migrated to the Muslim majority state. So we are one of the ethnic groups that are sort of a part of the medley. And so I am based in Karachi, and I was born and bred in Karachi, but Swat Valley is right on the northern belt, which is a very different. It's an alpine forest region, and it's close to the capital, Islamabad. And then Lahore is also, we call it a cultural capital of Pakistan. You can see the Mughal architecture, the people who built the Taj Mahal, their architecture and everything. You can see the big monuments there, the Lahore Fort, and various other Shalimar Gardens, various other royal architecture from that era. And Karachi was more of a small fishing town that the British developed into a port and industrial center, because it allowed them to take everything from India by railroad and then via sea to Europe. So it was more of a 19th and 20th century. And then the migrants who came from India when Pakistan was formed, they contributed to the population, like my family. So it was a very interesting cultural mix. And then much later in my career, I became part of ICOMOS, which allowed me to know about various grants and such. And that took me to Swat Valley for the first time. And it is a sort of a remote region, even though it's close from Islamabad, because of the, altitude and rough terrain. It wasn't so accessible. And also, what is Pakistan today is traditionally the region through which people enter India, because all the other sides are either covered by sea or tall mountains on that side. So this is over the years, there's layers and layers of multicultural, both genetic stock and various cultures and languages, and even our national language, Urdu, is a mixture. They say it's a Turkish word, for the people the Muslims who came and mixed and created a vocabulary that is sort of distinct from Hindi. And if we talk about the heritage, the most ancient layers are the Indus Valley civilization. This is a Bronze Age thing where at the same time that the pyramids were being built, there were planned cities that were happening with, planned roads, drainage and sewage systems planned for every household, 200 wells throughout the city. This is a bath which has like waterproofing with bitumen, very high level of technology, and the idea of the modular brick, like one man, doing the brickwork at that time. These are seals and stamps and weights and measures of that bronze. It's very highly developed culture, and the entire Indus River basin was taken over by that. This is more in the south of Pakistan, and the north, where Swat is. You have more of the remnants of this culture, which is where the Greeks, Alexander the Great and his armies settled there. And then they left people as well, and there was a mixture of culture. So the Greek and Indian styles of art also mix. That's very different from a Chinese Buddha, for example. So that many under these you can see stupas, religious pilgrimage sites that you can live all over Swat. Plus the Muslim heritage, like the conquerors, Mahmud of Ghazna, who conquered India, for example. His mosque is also found there. So, so coming back to Swat overall, it's an alpine forest region with high snow-capped peaks and such. And today, there's also population pressure. A lot people are building along the banks of the river, and it's sort of it becomes dangerous also. Interestingly, the monsoon rains that used to only come in the south are also moving up. So all these climatic pressures. Plus, when I went there, this was post-Taliban entry into Swat, where they took over the whole of Swat Valley, and they wanted to ban all kinds of education except for religious madrasa education. So it was a very tough and very sad time. There's violent extremism, and this is a poet who wrote in that era. So anyway, coming back to when we started work in Swat, there was no the folk heritage of Swat was very special, and yet there was no official caretaking of it. Like the government departments that do conservation and documentation of heritage, they only go to the ancient heritage, but that's 150 to 300 years old. There's no documentation officially, and there's no conservation projects. But they're very interesting. A German scholar wrote about it, that it's unparalleled as a refined rural heritage in the Muslim world. And it has the motifs that go on the wood carving, which is considered special, is Gandhara period, China, Indus Valley civilization. All the motifs are found in this medley. And they're also community-owned spaces. When the people came back from the floods, they found them that they came back from the 2009 war on terror, when people were asked to leave by the Pakistan army. Then suddenly a flood happened. So that also added to the increased poverty. And then the wood carving craftsmen, they couldn't find work, and they were displaced. So all these factors affect the heritage. And then I found this call for, there was some grant money available from the Prince Claus Fund. And we found in this village, Spalbandai village, a very interesting small village with interesting history. We found a mosque there that could be conserved. And at the same time, after the flood, money was coming in from the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and the Gulf areas. And they were building these ugly concrete structures which didn't have anything to do with the traditional, and they were painting their flags on them. And so the mosque where we were considering saving the heritage, they were also thinking of doing the same, perhaps breaking down their mosque. And Burju, I think I've discussed this with you, right? These are some of the most famous mosque typologies around the world, and the Swat mosque doesn't fall into any of them because it probably is a prehistoric type of pre-Islamic type of mosque typology. It's very simple. These are very small scale, modest scale structures. The most precious thing in them is these wood carvings. And so there's a door there you can see, which has the winter praying area, and this courtyard is the summer praying area. And we found this very nice mosque, which needed conservation. The community considered it unfit for use because structurally it was getting dangerous, and they also wanted to expand it to accommodate the larger population. So we negotiated with the community. That is Shaukat Sharar Saab. He's the first trained architect of Swat Valley. We worked with him and was in his village also. He became project manager while I was project coordinator. And he's sort of trying to convince the head of the mosque committee to do this project. And the people were, had just come out of the Taliban, very strict Islamic rules, and they said, why are these Europeans giving us money for our village mosque? Like, aren't they Christians and Jews? Like, what is their interest in a mosque? So we sort of, started those whole discussion about what cultural heritage is and how it can be important. So basically, then and they were going to also contribute. The community took over the spot at the side of the mosque, and the community offered free labor. As you can see, they're all demolishing the mosque to expand the mosque. And this is, just pictures of an old picture of the mosque, and people praying, of course. Children come to learn the Quran. This is Shahriyar Khan, who's for another coordinator on the project. And then we couldn't find the right craftsman who could be who knew enough about the traditional methods of woodwork, because both structurally and in terms of ornamentation, we needed somebody to know this well. So we found Akhtar Munir, and his brother had been quite a master craftsman. And then he, exhibited both the knowledge of the carving as well as how to traditionally replace a column where, this, while keeping the structure safe, and that was done on site as well. So several columns, which was, needed structural replacement were replaced. And here's me in the, having a meeting with the mosque committee and the locals. That's Muhammad Roshan Saab. He was leading SPC, the NGO at that time. And it was interesting, the village women were very, they were happy that a woman architect was leading this. Everyone called me lady engineer. And then the mosque committee head was very sweet in that he offered me the keys to his library room, and he said, whenever the men come to pray, if you want to just go in there and make it your office, you can. So that was nice. And then one thing is conservation of the heritage, but also the other thing that we prioritized was the needs of the community, the living needs, not just make heritage a fetishized sort of, not just talk about the heritage, but the current needs. So we upgraded as part of the project around the sides, the steps, the railings, the ablution area, toilet blocks, the seating area around where the elders sit in the morning and read the newspaper. All these aspects we thought were part of the project. And then we sort of inserted these other development sector sort of priorities, like did a village planning workshop. We mapped the resources in the village, and also made youth and the community part of those discussions about where to go forward with the village development. These are some sketches and pictures of the old and the new parts together. And then that's, Akhtar Munir, who he also made these samples of the different traditional types of motifs, and also the new door he incorporated several of the motifs of the door. Here's another one. And so we try to keep, the style and the sort of artistic ethos of the old and the new part as well. And it was interesting that, the old style of the mosque was kept as it was. Of course, this boundary looks a little new, but people said, we want a minaret too. Even though Swat mosques don't have minarets, traditionally did not have minarets. So we just got a prefab minaret from the city. And, that's a lovely view of the mountains from the courtyard. And then we documented in detail, this is the most old door. You see the old horseshoe with large. This is like a more pre-Islamic tradition, maybe more Central Asian. And then we documented each column. Each column had a different vocabulary of ornamentation and very detailed work, and different craftsmen had worked in different eras. Over time, the columns have been replaced. So they exhibited different, I'm not going to go through all of them, but you can see this one column has all these different details on it. And then we also, tried to create a glossary of terms in English. Urdu, Pashto is the local language of the Pashtun people. And we tried to create both a glossary of patterns and a glossary of terms. Then another project that we have, how am I doing on time? Are we doing okay? Yeah, okay. So one is a mosque. We all know a mosque is a place of worship, but there's another interesting building type here. And I think in every Pakistani folk culture, there's some version of this, but in the Pashtun culture, which is found both in Afghanistan and Pakistan, there's a Hujra, which is you can call it a male commons, where it's a village-based building type. Everyone can come here, and it serves as in a small village or even a large village. It functions as a common area for people to come hang out, play music, play games, and also there was like this large courtyard there. And these, by the way, two separate pictures, but also it has like 11 rooms in a row on the side. It serves as a hotel, or you can house guests. There's no places to stay if you have guests. So if there's for example, if there's a barat, if there's a wedding happening and people from other villages are coming, this becomes like a hotel. And also the men, this is also a culture where I would think throughout the Muslim world, this is perhaps the most conservative in terms of gender segregation and gender seclusion. The women are highly secluded from the male sphere and the public sphere. So in that sense, the men socialize separately from the women, and there are hardly any, in terms of public spaces, maybe there are these common ovens where women go and bake bread together, or sometimes they might go and also fetch water together in terms of public space. Sometimes they work in the fields also, but otherwise the homes and the mohalla, the neighborhood is the main part for women to socialize in, and the men socialize in the hujra. So the hujra is a sort of building typology in this culture. In different parts of Pakistan, in Sindh, you'll call it autak. In Punjab, you'll call it something else. But because of, I think, the gender segregation, this becomes a more active and a more necessary building typology. And also, we found this one, which is still community owned and community used. Otherwise, the Hujras have become privatized more, like private salons or whatever. So we wanted to conserve this also. It needed similar work. And also, this is these are people who are, who used to go to war a lot, maybe at a local level or at a, national, international level, wherever they were used to having these war preparatory dances. For example, the men used to dance in the courtyard. Now we made this big parapet with a lawn here, but they used to have these sort of tribal, music and dance used to happen just, and the male sphere was very different from the female sphere. The dances are also folk dances might also be separate for the men and women. So this is a traditional Rawab play, and this is a traditional dancer, Bastun sword dance in preparation for war. And there are stories of how this Hujra was used for those wartime dancers before they went to fight. And then with the Swat Participatory Council, the work I started on that mosque conservation with them, but then we also branched out into neighboring valleys. Here's another valley, Kalash Valley, where this is an isolated, unique pagan, not Muslim, but a pagan culture. And there are different stories about, is it Alexander the Greek's people got left behind here, or different tales of origin, myths of origin about them. And they also have this sort of, mountain architecture similar to Swat, with a lot of like earthquake proofing. We documented some of this culture also. And I think that overall, like a development kind of approach to conservation was there throughout. And we felt that besides the tangible conservation, we wanted to survey this heritage, which is not being looked upon by the government agencies. Then we created some publications, and when there were issues or crises in the villages, for example, floods, whatever, we organized flood relief activities. So overall, like a community relationship building was important to us. And then we also, our latest work is to have a protection listing campaign with the government, that we want to have these buildings, some of them listed. And then this is and I'll just sort of, wrap up on this. This is another mosque that we conserve. And this one also got a nomination for the Aga Khan Award for architecture. And it was similar, it was also in the Swat Valley. You can see the similar sort of courtyard prayer area and winter prayer area. And it needed much more column conservation. And we had Akhtar Munir again come and work on this. And also the other carpenters who were engaged in the project. We created a kind of a symbiotic relationship with them, in that they learned some of the carving from him, and also they contributed in their knowledge of the local building. The ones who were already from the village, they knew a lot more about the history of the structure. So they learned from each other. And also we instilled in them some idea about what our conservation principles were. And we wanted to tell them that we value the traditional, and also the idea that whatever new intervention we do, it should be reversible. And we also wanted to document everything, even if we were removing something old, we wanted to document that. Yes, again, great variety and proportions, design, and you can see the sort of a Tibetan aesthetic and that this is a pre-Islamic traditions are mixing here. This is Saddam, our one of our SPC lead. Some doorway work, and this is the mihrab and member of the and then overall, I would say, we wanted to serve the community in the village and also bring them up to date with standards. So both, in our surveying, we were using modern equipment and making the drawings, and they wanted to keep it as a community center. And one interesting thing that's happening is that the Pakistan government had banned jirgas, which are the traditional Pashtun parliament, the tribal parliament, because they would often go against a Pakistani law. They could declare somebody, wajibul qatl, like, declare somebody, worthy of being killed or something. Or they would have many old-timey laws that did not were not acceptable to the modern government. So they have banned the jirgas. But instead, the mosque committee has become a place where arbitration, mediation, and the community decisions. So we wanted to keep, recognize and keep the centrality of that space, and also, as a learning space. And then, for example, the ablution block also becomes a place where the females of the village, whether it's women or girls, would go to, if they didn't have piped water, they would go somewhere to a well or a source of water. But this allowed them to access the water locally. So I think it's a sort of overall development sector approach, and then also bringing with the first mosque that we did in 2012. I think what we did was started a trend of talking about cultural heritage, Sakafati Virsa in Urdu, and the mosques never had talked about that before. They were just talking about Sharia or Islamic rules, or at the most community. So we linked, community values with cultural heritage, and then a trend started. Different villages started talking about saying we have a better cultural heritage than your village, and or trying to attract tourists with it. And you have to remember that it's a remote region. But then again, people were coming onto Facebook as well. So there's very modern and very traditional things happening together. And the youth who had been subjected to that Taliban rule, it was a good transition for them to have that discourse of a community building as well as valuing heritage to move forward. And these are also some, we also surveyed post-period mosques and hujras with some samples, as well as an interesting period of history, which was under the British rule. The Swat, the Yusufzai tribes of Swat formed a princely state of their own. So there's some very interesting monuments left from that period. It was a small princely state that collaborated with the British, and they found a Sayyid, like a descendant of the Prophet, to become their leader, and they made the state. And it was merged into Pakistan very late in 1969. But in that meantime, it was, you know, they had the ruling family, the Mears had a summer palace built in this the Western style. And here is a very remote area. They have a very interesting tower. There was a police tower. You can see the earthquake reinforcement, the stone rubble masonry and the wood layering. So that in the case of earthquakes, it can shake but not fall down. So it's a very typical way of building in north of India and Pakistan earthquake resistance. And then I think I've already talked about this, that the values we had working with SBC, valuing community ownership, having technical standards which are modern, and making people aware of their heritage, not just keeping it as a boutique project. And then the whole project of countering violent extremism. I think our project of heritage gels well with that. So with that, I'd like to. Do you have any questions or comments or critique, please?
I have a question. I would say that. Mine is not a question, but I did love your approach very much because like when I first heard the word conservation, let's say, it also reminds us to how can I say monumentalization, or like we're doing it somehow inaccessible and some sort of like dying made. How can I say so? People are also so involved in these projects. They're also like so invested, and this made it so much more humane, I would say. Yeah, that's why I love it so much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for appreciating it. So, you had a comment. Okay. Balancing the modern with traditional. Yeah. I think it's a very good question. Where do you, how much do you adapt and how much do you conserve? So I think our main thing was that usually what people were doing there is that these agents would come and collect these old columns from settlement, collectors abroad or something, and people didn't know what was happening. But basically, I think we kept the core of the traditional structure and did structural replacements while keeping the traditional way of building. For example, I showed you a replaced, and there we didn't say put an RCC column or frame where there's weakness. We employ the traditional way of building with the same manner that was there. And the core of the historic part of the building kept that, and the expansion or addition was on the side. So the original was not affected, and you can still see the boundaries, the extent of the original work. So that's the sort of a way in which we balanced it. Yeah.
I have a similar question. Those evidence of vocabulary of interesting about transferring them to digital or by digitizing
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. We keep coming back to the part about resources. The resources are very, very limited in the in the village, but, with the university, yes, yes. You guys wanna do it? Send the pictures. Right, so, yeah, I think that is a very good thing, because, we have, one or two publications, but digitization would make them. Broader reach.
Yes, you mentioned online this. Thank you for what type of what species of tree?
So there's a couple of different, there's a lot of pine trees, and there's deodar and shisham. Do you know the names of the village?
I've heard of it, but I don't know how to.
You have your Google workings? So I know these, Urdu words more, but, yeah, they're sort of, alpine forest varieties and, so there's more than one variety of, wood used. And also, it's very interesting, we had one very old gentleman, a carpenter, come when we started the work. And we remembered how, in 1969, when the princely state merged with the government of Pakistan, the state ceased to exist, in 69. So suddenly the laws changed, and he said the day the laws changed, we went out and cut more trees to replace such and such column in here in the mosque. And basically that was a shift from treating the forests as commons areas. The idea of forests as commons also, like treating them as community owned, and each family can only cut X number of trees in 1 year. And then when the princely state kept that traditional way of treating the forests, but when shifted to Pakistan, which is a modern nation state with a total capitalist economy, capped economy, suddenly it was like a capitalist commodity, and anyone could go cut any number of trees. So that was also a very interesting history. Yeah.
Yeah, each tree, for example, for a specific feature, it has to be all them, maybe, there are some places, but we plant it and it grows and, up to 300 or 200 years, we have to replace it. And plant it now, and it becomes part of the process, to change this figure, that kind of transmission, but I know it's a bit. Maybe too romantic, but I mean, please do that.
No, but I think in traditional society, that's the kind of planning they did, and they had a very strong connection to the land also. So they would do precisely such thinking, and even the building life would be considered in that way. And literally, they would say that this fruit tree I'm planting for my kids, the next so many generations will benefit from it, for example. But that kind of thinking has really, the cash economy has gone away like this, so it's just, and in Pakistan country, for example, the joke that a man, when he wants to get married, has to provide, the Islamic meher, I don't know what you call it, to the girl's family or the girl to be able to marry her. It's like a dower, I think, in English, they call it. So they say that, he goes and cuts X number of trees to get that amount of money, and it just, it's like the difference of cash economy that's happening.
All personal, I'm really curious about the whole history. And all of them, such
think that you have done more? Done more? More? Or maybe you just use that as a practice, because you can find that they can do the other work that yeah, no, it's a very good question. Interestingly, this is some work I've done, I've also taught in this region in the same province, in Cape Hujras province, a university. And somehow, like, the culture allows, if you're a professional, you come in with a lady engineer. So they're like, okay, lady engineer can both go into the male sphere and work there with, with the labor and whatever you're having all day, you can be there. Then you can also go into the homes, and they don't, sorry, they welcome lady engineers to come visit the home. So there's no bar on that. So in a way, I was like, I had access to more than the men in a way. If I was male from the outside, I could not access the homes of those people. So yeah, I think it was pretty good how people treated me, and they were very they taught me very professionally, whether it was the community members or the craftsmen, or they see that you can talk, you have a vision and you're technically adept. They respect you for it, and you're not treated as a another. And I think they have stricter rules for their own women in the village than they would for me. So yeah.
Which women have any,
Yeah, so that's interesting that I kind of became like a focal person, and I would be sharing pictures with them, and then they would also like be hosting they would be hosting the craftsmen who would come from outside the village, like they would provide the food, and then they would and then I think we tried to involve them in the village planning workshops and such. So there was that, but really the gender segregation is very strict there, so they can't come into the mosque. Yeah. Right. Rosewood, that's right. Yeah, yeah. We can do the structural work. So pretty. Yes. Think that they learned it from their others. Yeah. Were they kind of I don't know, how they said it was other generations, but I have to also perspective in early they like proud or growing in the community and all this. Yeah, very good question, because the whole idea of crafts, I think not just in this but globally, is that a local patronage structure is very different, and now we subject everyone to the tax economy. So it's like this open market, and you can go anywhere, you can travel to any other city, relocate. But here in the villages, the landlords would patronize the craftsmen, that they would, for example, they would Ghana is more like provide grain for the whole year, like wheat and pulses, whatever. If you find the craftsman, you're the landlord, you would give me a whole years of supply. So my family is fed, I don't have to worry about that. And I'll just work for you, and I can also on a barter basis work for anyone else in the community as well. So, there was kind of a security that the craftsmen had, and they were very locally based, I had a relationship with the landlord and several other craftsmen of different types, exchanging things amongst each other, and it's very, very local. But here also, like I mentioned, the flood that relocated people. This is the largest internal displacement of people in the 20th century, apparently. Getting the figures in millions. The Pakistan Army asked the entire population of Swat Valley to move out when they carried out the war on terror over there. So when people came back, they didn't necessarily go back to their villages, a lot of them. Even either stayed in the other cities, Lahore, Islamabad, Karachi, or if they came back, they stayed in the big city, Mingora, capital. They didn't go back to the village. So you see all this displacement was happening, and then suddenly you don't have the traditional patron anymore. So the social relationships change. And also then you're subject to, and in the traditional matrix, you only do your traditional work, that style. But now, the market changed and they said, oh, we don't like this style. We want you to get, style from Punjab or a modern furniture. So suddenly the craft is being lost, and the guy will not teach his son the same thing necessarily.
In production that we create,
Yeah.
how there is an interest in their local.
Yes, I mean, I don't know how much we had a role in that and doing some of those conservation projects and making them famous in the area, and then, putting news about it in the paper, on TV, social media. So there was this trend of like, wow, our culture is important, suddenly youth are saying, we're very proud of our heritage. Gradually now, I can say that so many years later, the market demand for it is back. So for the Swati style of carving, you don't want it again, even though it had shifted in the past. So yeah, I think there's some value to doing work like this, and we had to, it was hard to relocate the first guy, the craftsman, somebody who knew all of it. But gradually, we also documented several others who were in different parts of the valley, and we, made a directory of them. Yeah, 6 to 8 master craftsmen who were, and then they're getting work again, and we try to involve them in our projects. So.
And in the first place, you say that they are so people not say yeah, I think that's great. It's Montego, quite, no. I don't know. Trying to talk for each other, care for each other.
And it's very different. These projects, they're all community-owned buildings, mosques, open grounds. It's a different kind of ownership that the community and the youth have. They feel a connection to it the way they wouldn't if it was a private building. Yeah. Thank you so much for your appreciation and engagement. Yeah, we were, the discussion I was mentioning, that there was a revived demand in the market for furniture and architectural craft of the style. So I think, even though we did these small scale projects, but it has an impact. Yeah. Okay. Where are you from now? Oh,